A very good morning, students. Today we'll be learning about droughts. Natural disasters usually announce their arrival. Hurricanes uproot trees, tornadoes roar, and wildfires wipe out entire landscapes. These large sudden events generate destruction on impact and then they're gone. Drought is different. It doesn't make a big entrance. The start of a drought might even be mistaken for a bit of a dry spell, and its impact builds over time. But while often described as a creeping disaster, drought leaves a trail of destruction as dangerous and deadly as any other extreme weather event. In fact, drought has affected more people around the world in the past 4 decades than any other type of natural disaster. Objectives. In today's class, we'll learn about droughts, types of droughts, causes, measures to prevent droughts, and 3 pillars of drought prevention and droughts in India. Drought is characterized by a lack of precipitation such as rain, snow or sleet for a protracted period of time, resulting in water shortage. While droughts occur naturally, human activities such as water use and management can exacerbate dry conditions. What is considered a drought varies from region to region and is based largely on an area's specific weather patterns, whereas the threshold for drought may be achieved after just 6 rainless days on the tropical island of Bali. Annual rainfall would need to fall below 7 inches in the Libyan desert to warrant a similar declaration. Developing nations are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, including drought. More than 80% of drought-induced economic damage and loss suffered by developing nations from 2005 to 2015 was related to livestock, crops and fisheries. The economic toll of some $29 billion tells only part of the story. Drought in developing nations is notorious for creating water and food insecurity and exacerbating pre-existing problems such as famine and civil unrest. Types of drought. Droughts are categorized according to how they develop and what types of impact they have. The meteorological drought, the first type. This happens when the actual rainfall in an area is significantly less than the climatological mean of that area. The whole country as a whole may have a normal monsoon, but different meteorological districts and subdivisions can have below normal rainfall. The rainfall categories for smaller areas are defined by their deviation from a meteorological area's normal rainfall. Imagine a large swath of parched, cracked earth, and you're likely picturing the impact of meteorological drought, which occurs when a region's rainfalls fall short, far short of the expectations. Now, the next type of the drought is the agricultural drought. Inadequate soil moisture resulting in acute crop stress and fall in agricultural productivity. When available water supplies are unable to meet the needs of the crops or livestock at a particular time, agricultural drought may ensue. It may stem from meteorological drought, reduced access to water supplies or simply poor timing. For example, when snowmelt occurs before runoff is most needed to hydrate the crops. The hydrological drought. A hydrological drought occurs when a lack of rainfall persists long enough to deplete the surface water, the rivers, reservoirs or the streams and groundwater supplies. Now let's look at some of the causes of the droughts. Let's look at the natural causes first. Droughts have plagued humankind throughout much of our history, and until recently, they were often natural phenomena that triggered by cyclical weather patterns such as amount of moisture and heat in the air, land and sea. Fluctuating ocean and land temperatures. Ocean temperatures largely dictate global weather patterns, including dry and wet conditions on land, and even tiny temperature fluctuations can have huge ripple effects on climate systems. Research shows that dramatic and prolonged temperature changes in the North Pacific and North Atlantic Oceans correspond directly to extreme weather patterns on land, including persistent droughts in North America and the Eastern Mediterranean, the latter of which has been described as the region's worst drought in 900 years. Fluctuating ocean temperatures are also behind El Niño and La Niña weather phenomenon, with La Niña notorious for drying out the southern United States. The altered weather patterns. The distribution of rainfall around the world is also impacted by how air circulates through the atmosphere. When there is an anomaly in surface temperatures, particularly over the sea, air circulation patterns are altered, changing how and where precipitation falls around the world. The new weather patterns can throw water supply and demand out of the sync, as is the case when earlier than usual snowmelt reduces the amount of water available for crops in the summer. Reduced soil moisture. Soil moisture can impact cloud formation and hence precipitation. When water from wet soil evaporates, it contributes to the formation of rain clouds, which return the water back to the earth. When land is drier than usual, moisture still evaporates into the atmosphere, but not at a volume adequate to form rain clouds. The land effectively bakes, removing additional moisture and further exacerbating dry conditions. Let's look at the man-made causes. While drought occurs naturally, human activity from water use to greenhouse gas emissions is having a growing impact on their likelihood and intensity. The first man-made cause, the climate change. Climate change and global warming specifically impact drought in two basic ways. Rising temperatures generally make wet regions wetter and dry regions drier. For wetter regions, warm air absorbs more water, leading to larger than rain events. But in more arid regions, warmer temperatures mean water evaporates more quickly. In addition, climate change alters large-scale atmospheric circulation patterns, which can shift storm tracks off their typical paths. The excess water demand. Drought often reflects an imbalance in water supply and demand. Regional population booms and intensive agricultural water use can put a strain on water resources, even tipping the scale enough to make the threat of a drought a reality. One study estimates that from 1960 to 2010, the human consumption of water increased the frequency of drought in North America by 25%. Meanwhile, demand for water supplied by upstream lakes and rivers, particularly in the form of irrigation and hydroelectric dams, can lead to the diminishing or drying out of downstream water sources, which may contribute to drought in the other regions. Deforestation and soil degradation. When trees and plants release moisture into the atmosphere, clouds form and return the moisture to the ground as rain. When forests and vegetation disappear, less water is available to feed the water cycle, making entire regions more vulnerable to drought. Meanwhile, deforestation and other poor land use practices such as intensive farming can diminish soil quality and reduce the land's ability to absorb and retain water. Experts believe the 1930s Dust Bowl was caused in large part by poor agricultural practices combined with the cooling of the Pacific and warming of the Atlantic by as little as a few tenths of a degree. Now the big question arises, are droughts increasing? The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change did not see a global trend towards increasing dryness or drought across the world in 2013 when it released its most recent assessment. But global temperatures have unequivocally become hotter, and hotter conditions precipitate extreme weather, including severe drought. Hotter conditions also reduce snowpack, which provides a key source of water supply and natural water storage in many regions. Looking forward, as temperatures continue to rise, the IPCC and other researchers anticipate an intensification of these regional trends. Drought prevention and preparation. We can't control the weather, but by limiting our climate change contributions, reducing wastewater and using water more efficiently, we can prepare for and maybe even curb future dry spells. Climate change mitigation. The impact of climate change, including more severe drought, can be mitigated only when countries, cities, businesses, and individuals shift away from the use of climate warming fossil fuels to cleaner renewable energy sources. The Paris Agreement, which was adopted by nearly every nation in 2015 and aims to limit the Earth's warming over the next century to 2 degrees Celsius or 1.5 degrees Celsius if possible, lays the framework for global climate action. But the current commitments countries made under the pact so far aren't considered enough to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. It will succeed only if countries go beyond their commitments. Urban water conservation and efficiency. Aging infrastructure, faulty meters, crumbling pipes, leaky water mains cost the United States an estimated 2.1 trillion gallons in lost drinkable water each year. Meanwhile, a single leaky faucet releasing just 3 drips a minute wastes more than 100 gallons of water in a year. States, cities, water utilities, businesses and citizens can curb water waste by investing in climate smart strategies. These include repairing leaky infrastructure from utility pipes to the kitchen faucet. In California, these strategies alone could reduce water use by as much as 60%. For individuals, there are many other ways to conserve water as well. Water recycling. Recycled water, also called reclaimed water, is highly treated wastewater that can be used for myriad purposes, from landscape irrigation such as watering public parks and golf courses to industrial processes such as providing cooling water for power plants and oil refineries to replenishing groundwater supplies. Grey water, recycled water derived from sinks, shower drains and washing machines, can be used on-site, for example in homes and businesses, for non-potable uses such as garden or lawn irrigation. Recycled water can serve as a significant water resource, reducing demand from sources such as rivers, streams, reservoirs and underground water supplies. Stormwater capture. Every year in the United States, about 10 trillion gallons of untreated storm water washes off paved surfaces and rooftops through sewer systems and into the waterways. Not only does this create pollution problems as contaminants from land get flushed into rivers, lakes and oceans, but it reduces the amount of rainwater that soaks back into the earth to replenish groundwater supplies. Agriculture, water conservation and efficiency. Agriculture is the largest consumer of Earth's available fresh water, accounting for 70% of withdrawals worldwide. Strategies for better water management in the agricultural sector focus on increased water efficiency and reduced consumption. These include improved irrigation techniques such as switching from flood to drip irrigation, which alone can cut water use by about 20%, as well as more precise irrigation scheduling to adjust the amount of water used at different stages of crop growth. Meanwhile, crop rotation, no-till farming, a method for growing crops with minimal soil disturbance, and the use of cover crops help build soil health, which in turn enables the land to absorb and retain more water. Now let's look at the 3 pillars of drought management. Firstly, monitoring and early warning systems. It is critical to monitor drought indicators such as precipitation, temperature, soil moisture, vegetation, stream flow and groundwater. Early warning systems analyze these drought indicators and disseminate drought forecasts to key stakeholders in a timely manner. Now the next pillar is the vulnerability and impact assessment. A vulnerability and impact assessment considers social, economic and environmental factors to determine a community's susceptibility to drought hazards. For example, women, children, pastoralists, farmers and marginalized communities could be vulnerable population groups. The next pillar is the mitigation and response. Drought mitigation includes both the structural, that is the appropriate crops, dams and engineering projects, and non-structural measures which are policies, public awareness and legal framework necessary to limit the adverse impact of drought response. The drought response refers to assistance administered during or immediately after the drought to save lives and meet the affected community's basic needs. Now let's look at droughts and other countries. In the United States, drought is the second most costly form of natural disaster behind the hurricanes. exacting an average toll of $9.6 billion in damage and loss per event. Meanwhile, some level of drought often has some part of the country in its grip. During the historic dry spell of 2012, the nation's most extensive since the 1930s in the United States, as much as the 2/3 of the country, that is the United States, was affected by drought at its peak. US droughts can be persistent as well. From 2012 to 2016, scanty rainfall and record-breaking heat in California created what is estimated to have been the state's worst drought in 200 years. Now let's move on to droughts and India. Drought is a continuous and lengthy period during which no significant rainfall is recorded. In India, the Meteorological Department of India defined drought as a period of at least 22 consecutive days on none of which is there more than 0.25 millimeters of rainfall. This definition, however, does not apply to the whole of India. In areas like Mausandram and Cherrapunji, which record 1200 centimeters of average annual rainfall, even 1 week recording less than 0.25 mm of rainfall may be considered as a drought period. In general, the areas recording less than 60 centimeters of rainfall annually and in which the variability of rainfall is more than 20% are the drought prone areas in India. Areas where the variability of rainfall varies between 20 to 60% like Rajasthan, west of Aravallis and east of the Western Ghats are chronic drought prone areas. In India, droughts are more frequent in the areas where the average annual rainfall is less than 60 centimeters and the variability of rainfall is over 20%, provided canal and tube well irrigation is not available. Although over 60% of the area has high variability of rainfall, there are 3 areas which are highly vulnerable to the droughts. The drought prone areas of India are the arid and the semi-arid areas of Rajasthan. There is a contiguous region covering greater parts of northern Gujarat, Rajasthan, southwest Haryana, southern parts of Punjab, western Madhya Pradesh and parts of Agra division of Uttar Pradesh. This drought prone area, having a variability of rainfall of over 40%, stretches over 65 lakh square kilometers. Parts of these contiguous drought prone areas irrigated by canals and tube wells are however less affected by droughts. Next region, the rain shadow areas of Western Ghats. This is the area lying to the east of Western Ghats, the Sahyadri mountains, stretching from Jalgaon to Hyderabad and Mahbubnagar in Telangana, Bidar, Bijapur, Gulbarga and Raichur of Karnataka, and Coimbatore, Madurai, Salem and Ramananthapuram of Tamil Nadu. The variability of rainfall in this region varies between 30 to 40%. It is in these areas that several thousand farmers have committed suicide during the last decade. Other drought prone areas. These are isolated tracts covering an area of about 1 lakh square kilometer in different parts of the country which are drought prone areas. These areas include Kalahandi region of Odisha, Purulai district of West Bengal, Palamu plateau of Jharkhand, Mirzapur plateau and Bundelkhand of Uttar Pradesh, Coimbatore, Madurai and Tirunelveli districts of Tamil Nadu. These scattered pockets cover over 1 lakh square kilometers. The Maharashtra drought of 1965 to 1966, the Bihar drought of 1966 to 67, the Kalahandi drought of 1996 to 97 and the continuous deficit rainfall in Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and western Tamil Nadu during the last decade forced a number of farmers to commit suicides. The monsoon failure in 2009 over greater parts of the country resulted into drought. Consequently, the Kharif cropped area decreased by about 40%. The drought of 2016 is historic, in which thousands of farmers committed suicide. Up to 33 crore people in 2.5 lakh villages of 266 districts in 11 states were affected in drought in 2015 and 2016, and this is quoted in the Hindu Business Line of November 8, 2018. Drought management in India. The Government of India has paid enough attention to droughts and drought affected areas right from the first 5-year plan. Before 1987, the government tried to provide relief to the people of the drought affected areas by providing employment opportunities to the affected population and distribution of food grains through public distribution system or the PDS. The contingent drought relief expenditure imposed a serious strain on public finances as huge amounts had to be divested from development for undertaking relief projects. In some states like Rajasthan, the drought relief outlays exceeded the developmental outlays. In order to overcome this problem, the drought management strategy was adopted in the early 1970s. The drought management approach differed from the drought relief approach with regard to objectives, resilience, reliance of early warning indicators and timing of the public intervention. According to the Committee of Disaster Management of 2002, drought management is generally done by focusing on employment generation, water conservation and power supply, standing crop saving and public distribution of supplies of essential commodities. Drought Prone Area Program. The Drought Prone Area Program, which covers 615 blocks spread over 90 districts in the western, central and southern parts of country, is an integrated area development program in the agricultural sector. It is the earliest area development program launched by the central government in 1973-74 to tackle the problems of the drought-hit areas of the country, to make judicious and scientific utilization of the agricultural land, water and livestock resources, to enhance and stabilize the income of people of drought-prone areas, particularly of the weaker section of the society, and restoration of ecological balance. And some of the important elements of the program include the integrated watershed management and management of water resources. Next, the soil and moisture conservation measures. Next, the afforestation with special emphasis on social and agroforestry. Development of pasture lands and forest range management in conjunction with development of sheep husbandry. Next, we have the livestock development and dairy development. Next, we have the restructuring of the cropping patterns and changes in agronomic practices. The adoption of scientific rotation of crops with an emphasis on the leguminous crops, the development of subsidiary occupations, water harvesting, development of minor irrigation projects, construction of underground canals and lined canals, desalinization of seawater for irrigation and domestic use, diversification of agriculture, development of cottage and household industries, development of alternate sources of energy like the solar, wind and biogas for domestic and industrial purposes. More research is required to increase agricultural productivity in the dry farming regions. Some of the important achievements of the drought prone area program include the Indira Gandhi Canal project, Sardar Sarovar project on the Narmada river, Central Arid Research Institute in Jodhpur to promote drought resistant plants, trees and crops. Drought is a prolonged dry period in the natural climatic cycle that can occur anywhere in the world. It is a slow onset phenomena caused by a lack of rainfall. Compounding factors such as poverty and inappropriate land use increase vulnerability to drought. When drought causes water and food shortages, there can be many impacts on the health of the population, which may increase morbidity and result in death. In recent years, most drought-related mortality has occurred in countries also experiencing political and civil unrest. India is an agriculture-based economy which is heavily reliant on rainfall. Thus, droughts are a major hindrance to this nation.